Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Ackerman, Executive Director, Columbus Citizens Foundation, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Taylor Smith, whose probably least important introduction is going to be that she's the daughter of Jody Police, one of our members, because that's an honor and a distinction unto itself. But Taylor's got a great story to tell us about the company she founded and her path to get there, and also a good hometown story, because she was born and raised here in New York City, and did her graduate degree at NYU. So I am not going to give a long introduction other than to say welcome, Taylor, and I really look forward to hearing your talk and then having some question and answers with you afterwards.
Great. I'm so happy to be here. So I will just share my screen with the presentation, and I guess we'll go from there. Okay, can everyone see? Great. So hi, everyone. Great to be chatting with you tonight about my brand, Broma, not your ordinary dark chocolate almond butters. Sorry. Okay. So my name is Taylor Smith. As Lisa mentioned, I am the CEO and co-founder of Broma. And yes, I am Italian. I know Smith doesn't exactly mean an Italian last name. My dad is half Italian and my mom is full Italian. So the half that he is not Italian is, of course, the Smith part. I'm actually also a citizen of Italy, and I minored in Italian in college. So I'm very well versed in the country and the language and all of that good stuff. I actually created the recipe for Broma, and I work on all things Broma on a day-to-day basis, from label design to coordinating production, ordering ingredients, packaging, and everything in between. I've always been a really big foodie, so I love restaurants and exploring cuisines of new places. I also studied abroad in Rome my junior year of college and have basically been obsessed with nutrition and food ever since. My background is actually as a commercial real estate broker. So I worked in commercial real estate for a period of time after I got out of college, and sort of intermediary to that, I got certified in culinary nutrition from the Natural Gourmet Institute. I also am certified as a personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And I also have my master's degree in food studies from NYU, which is how the whole genesis of Broma began. So what exactly is Broma? At Broma, we create organic dark chocolate almond butters made with lentils for added nutrients like iron, fiber, and folate, which are some of the most commonly missed and supplemented nutrients in your average person's everyday diet. Within Broma, we use all organic ingredients. We don't use any artificial sugars, flavors, or any preservatives. We use recyclable packaging, meaning that all of our products are in glass jars, which we encourage customers to reuse and recycle whenever they can. And we're really transparent and trustworthy, meaning that we take care to have ingredients that you can read and understand what you're putting into your body, as well as the fact that all of our products are kosher, vegan, and gluten-free, as well as a source of complete protein with a combination of the lentils and the almonds. And of course, we are women and LGBT founded. So the story of Broma nut butter actually began with my grandmother. She was told that she was deficient in protein by her doctor at the time. And I was in my first semester of my master's program at NYU for the food studies program. And I was taking a class called Sustainable Entrepreneurship. And we were tasked with creating a product that would be sustainable. And I used my grandmother as sort of the inspiration behind that product, which would eventually be protein. The interesting thing that sort of went into this whole Broma piece having to do with the elderly was, while doing research about the elderly, I found out that not only are they the fastest growing population in the US, but they have a ton of different deficiencies regarding nutrition, as well as issues with their taste receptors. So they're not able to taste things as well as they once were. And the thing about their nutritional needs is as they reach a certain age, their nutritional needs increase. And they're also a group of people who tend to be very interested in routine and habit. So they're unlikely to change their diet in order to meet those nutritional needs. So the idea behind Broma was to create a product that was delicious and had all of those extra nutrients needed in order to simply add it into their diet without it being like a big to-do that would totally change their routine and cause them to be an upheaval, sort of say about it. So our beginnings actually started at markets. So this is obviously pre-COVID. We had a booth at an outside market in this photo in Long Island City, but testing the product at an outside market like this was a great way to sort of see who our customer was and if people actually liked the product at all. Initially, when I did these markets, I was under the assumption that people would be overly nice about things regarding taste and texture and all those things. Definitely not true. People are very honest about food, particularly, which actually happened to be helpful for us in order to take into account the iteration process. So those markets, of course, you have to take into account that everyone likes different things. You're not going to be able to please everyone, especially with a food product, but there are certain tidbits that you keep hearing over and over again, and that helps you create a better product for your customers, which is who you're trying to serve in the end. So basically, we started with a drastically different product than what we have today. So just through trial and error and learning what customers really wanted, and what went well together, what didn't in terms of our ingredients, as well as the importance of food safety and food science, which is something that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you're creating a normal recipe at home. So things we learned, like certain oils have a longer shelf life than others. Almonds should be refrigerated or kept in a cold space. Glass products keep fresher for longer. So items in a glass jar or other glass item. These are all vital things that we learned through this iterative process, which actually happened to be very helpful for us. So our products today, this is just a photo of our 3 SKUs that we have right now. Our coconut, our original dark chocolate almond, and our dark chocolate cherry. So I'll just go into a little bit about these. So our original dark chocolate almond, magazine dubbed it better than Nutella, which is a badge I will proudly wear. So this is a true dark chocolate almond butter. It's smooth and creamy. It's a really easy addition to healthily satisfy your sweet tooth. I personally love it on oatmeal in the morning if I'm craving something sweet, or after a meal, because who doesn't love a sweet end cap to a savory dish? It's just really a great addition to any time of day. So this is our dark chocolate coconut almond butter. This is my personally favorite flavor. If you've ever had or loved a Girl Scout Samoa's cookie, this is essentially a Girl Scout Samoa cookie in a jar. It's smooth and chocolatey with a perfect hint of coconut, and it's really amazing consistency-wise to put on fruit, and you won't be sorry that you picked it up because it is honestly a great product. I'm proud of this one. The next one is dark chocolate cherry. This is our newest flavor. We actually released it on International Women's Day, which was on March 8th of this year. It's rich and chocolatey with a hint of cherry. It's really like a cherry dipped in a chocolate. So it's sweet and just a little bit tart. So what exactly makes Broma different than your average dark chocolate almond butter that you might see in your grocery store today? So I'm sure you've heard of a lot of things in a chocolate spread, but lentils is probably not one of them. And that's a reason why we love Broma. Lentils themselves are filled with a ton of nutrients. They're packed with B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, and potassium. They're also made up of about over 25% protein, which makes them a great alternative to meat, especially considering that they provide about 37% of your recommended daily intake of iron, in 1 cup of lentils. So in every jar of Broma, there's about a cup of lentils. Lentils are also very mild in flavor, which proves to be the perfect addition to our spreads because you can't taste that they're there, but they're still providing that essential nutrition. And then we have the CBD. So this is not to market yet, but we will be coming out with a hemp-based CBD chocolate spread that does not have THC in it. THC, for those who don't know, is the main psychoactive compound in cannabis. So something like CBD, you won't be able to taste it in the spread, but it provides help with things like inflammation, stress, muscle tension, pain, amongst other things. So it's really a great addition to a product like this, which definitely could be used as a pre-bedtime sort of situation. So this will be the second chocolate spread to market with a CBD in it. So now I'm going to go into a little bit about how you would even go about starting a CPG business. CPG stands for consumer packaged good. First and foremost, which I already kind of touched on, is the recipe formulation. So this involves a lot of trial and error, at least it did for me, in order to figure out how to put the lentils in the jar without them being noticed. But I think it's best to enlist the help of a food scientist who can really help with things like formulating the product and figuring out how to make it shelf stable. So being able to live on the shelf for a certain period of time and still be a viable, good tasting product. Also, they can help you with shelf life testing, which essentially tells you how long exactly that product can be on the shelf, and creating an FDA compliant nutrition label, which of course is really important. And then there's production. So there's a few different options when it comes to production. Initially, when you're a smaller company, especially, there's a commercial kitchen. So commercial kitchens are essentially a kitchen space where you can rent out space at a specified time in order to make your product. And there's an hourly fee in order to rent out that space. And when you're picking out a commercial kitchen to create your product, you have to make sure that they have the right equipment for your specific product, because a lot of kitchens have different things that may not line up with what you need. You can also bring in your own equipment, but of course there's an extra cost associated with that. It's basically just a space for you to do your thing and create your own thing. There's not going to really be people there helping you out, so you have to coordinate everything from the ingredients to the people helping you to how much product you can make in that space. All of those things are up to you, but it's a great place to start. After that time period in the commercial kitchen space, which we spent about a year in a commercial kitchen space, there's a co-packer. So a co-packer can be either small or large. Those terms are sort of loosely define what a co-packer is, but co-packers have things called MOQs, or minimum order quantities, which is how many units of a product that you want them to produce, or how much they're willing to produce for you in order to take you on as a client. So a co-packer makes the product for you. There's different co-packers that do different things. So some co-packers work with glass, some co-packers only do plastic, some don't work with peanuts, some are only gluten-free. Any combination of food item that you can think of, there's probably a co-packer for it. So it's really a hard process to find the exact co-packer that makes sense for you and your product and how much product you want produced. So that's an interesting process that we had to go through and sort of are continuing to go through as we expand as a company, but that's the next natural step after a commercial kitchen space. So then with the sourcing of ingredients, this one is kind of an ongoing process. It's essentially that the more ingredients that you purchase, the lower the price gets per unit, which obviously is great for customers, but not viable for a business as it's beginning, because you're not buying those large quantities that would make sense for a certain price range. But in order to find ingredient sources, you really have to pay attention to recommendations extensive Google searches and luck, and ultimately trial and error in order to find the right ones. Then we'll go on to packaging. So I have this little quote here, 3 seconds to spark interest. And I say this as we are currently going through a bit of a label revamp process. And they always say that you have 3 seconds to get a customer interested in your product as they're walking down a grocery store aisle. So picture yourself walking down a grocery store aisle. If you see something out of the corner of your eye, how often do you think that happens? And what exact product are you attracted to in those 3 seconds? You probably wouldn't even be able to say it, but that's how packaging works. And that's how it gets people to stop in the aisle. So it really involves a really unique balance of not standing out too much, being approachable, attractive, something that looks delicious. It's very fine balance. So my word of advice label wise is to find an agency or a designer to create your label from the get-go, not to waste your time and money on freelancers who may not be experienced in the space, because you'll ultimately be making it up later with iterations of labels. Next, we have certifications. Some of these apply mostly to being in a commercial kitchen space. So if you're physically going in and making your own product, you will need something like a food handler's license, which is a license, a physical license. You take a test in the city, you study for the test, of course, and it tells you how to place food in the refrigerator, not putting meats above vegetables, all that sort of thing. So you're creating a healthy space and work environment for your food product. Then there's an Article 20C license, which is a health inspection at the facility. So someone from the health department will come in and make sure that you're doing everything properly, that you're storing your ingredients in the right way, and you have something called a schedule process, which is when you have samples of your product, you send it to a lab and they create your recipe. And they also tell you different scientific checks that you have to implement while you're making the product in order to abide by those health code guidelines that you learned most likely in your food handler's certificate test. Then there's things like a WeBank certification, which is being certified as a minority or women's business. That's a certification that's not necessary in any way, but it's a great thing to have, especially in the food space once you start working with larger clients. Then there's things specific to food. So there's an organic certification, a kosher certification, non-GMO, gluten-free, amongst other things. All of those that I just mentioned actually take months to apply or longer. So those are essential, but sort of in the process right now, at least for us. The last piece is distribution, which is something that we are working on right now. And this applies once you are already in a co-packer and able to handle the quantities that a distributor needs. Distributor is sort of like a necessary evil. So picture going to a store and you're asking if they'll carry your product. They will most likely tell you or ask you if you're in a specific distributor, the two largest in the US being UNFI and KeHE. So the things about distributors is you need to have a large account purchasing from that distributor, purchasing product from that distributor, or they'll get rid of your product from their facility in a certain amount of time. But you need the distributor in order to get into that store in the first place. So it's a chicken or the egg situation, but a way around it is to go via the store and get them to accept you first and bring you into their distributor that they prefer to work with as their primary distributor. So why do stores want to work with a distributor? Think about yourself shopping on Amazon. You have all of the things you need in one place. And that's what a distributor is for a store. A store can log on to a distributor's site, find all of the products they want and need in one place and just place an order in one checkout box. So that's why a store would want you to be in their distributor. They don't want to include any extra work for things that doesn't suit them in their day-to-day life, which is much like us shopping on Amazon. And for reference, because I know I kind of went through that a little bit quickly, a brand such as Broma sells the product to the distributor at a certain price. Then the distributor sells the product to the store at a marked up price. And then the store sells it to you, the customer, at a more marked up price. So it's a line of people waiting to get paid from a single product. So sales and marketing, this is something that I've had to learn gradually over this CPG process. So one of the most important things I think I've learned is that velocity is the most important piece of the puzzle in the CPG grocery industry. So velocity means the speed at which a product sells per item per store. This is really vital in the retail industry. You need to be able to show that your product is selling a certain amount per SKU or flavor at each store at least an average rate. So new stores that you're pitching to will ask for these numbers. And it is also vital for sales numbers. So the more product you sell per week per store, better it is for the brand. Velocity is even more important than the amount of doors or stores that you're in. So if you're in 100 stores and aren't selling any product, it doesn't mean much, but if you're in 10 stores and sell 10 units per store per week, you're in a much better position than being in the 100 stores. So brokers and merchandising. I know I mentioned this before that I'm a commercial real estate broker, but brokers in the grocery CPG industry are completely different, although they have the same name. So brokers have all of the industry connections. They can easily access grocery buyers or what they call category managers at larger chains. If you're going to a small grocery store, that's just one store. Most likely they just have a general manager that does all of the ordering, but larger stores have individual people. So a category manager is essentially someone who is responsible for purchasing product for a specific category at the grocery store. So for example, at Whole Foods, there are specific category managers for candy and chocolates, nut butters and spreads, produce. There's a person that handles that group of product in that store, for that store. So last piece of that is the merchandising. This seems insignificant, but it's actually very essential to the industry. It means that you go into a store and you make sure that your product looks presentable on the shelf, that the labels are front facing, there's enough room for product on the shelf, that there's product lined up on the shelf, so there's no empty spaces. So that may involve going to the back of the store and getting more product that you had shipped and refilling the shelf. It's really all about appearances, and doing those small things can easily increase sales, which is crazy, but super interesting. And then the last piece here is the marketing. So marketing we do is largely based in social media. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. All these platforms are essential for spreading the word about the business. Of course, word of mouth is the best form of marketing out there. So all of these things help foster that. They're all free to join, but they involved a hefty amount of hand-holding, including content creation, paid marketing, reaching out to influencers who are essentially just people with a ton of followers or a big following to post about your product to their following. Then there's Google, which involves an ad spend as well as using targeted AdWords, SEO, which is search engine optimization, and placement on the Google page, for example, amongst other things. Then there's email marketing, which so many different platforms help with, but it's an essential form of marketing. I know it can seem kind of annoying when you're on the customer end about how many emails you receive on a daily basis, but it really does help the brand spread the word. And then the final piece is SMS marketing. This is relatively new, but it's a great way to get direct access to your customer to either let them know there's a sale or just to be aware of your brand in the first place. So where can you find us today? So our digital media presence right now on social media, we have just over 5,000 subscribers or followers. Our website has about 10,000, and our email subscriber list is just above 8. Our current retailers, we're in 65 retailers. We just launched in Fairway 2 weeks ago. So we are in all the Fairway stores throughout New York, which is very exciting, as well as City Acres and A Matter of Health, just to name a few. Our customers have obviously changed a little bit from the elderly population that we began targeting. So it largely is people 32 to 55 who are on the go, really care about their health and support specific causes that they truly believe in, as well as those 35 to 65 who have active lifestyles, mostly live in urban areas and eat holistically, so whole foods normally. The nut butter specialty market, so the market that we are specifically a part of, is expected to top $5.8 billion this year, and it grows at a rate of 7% year over year, expected into about 2025. So if you want to scan this QR code on the screen here, if you just open up your camera, it'll scan and bring you to our Instagram page if you want to follow us. If not, we also have Facebook and TikTok. You just type in at Eat Broma and we'll pop up if you want to shoot us a follow. And if you want to get in touch, here's just some details about me. Here's my email. Our website is www.eatbroma.com. I'll add it into the chat just so you guys are able to click on the link. And I also included a discount code if you want to try Broma for yourself. So just use the code Columbus at checkout and you'll get 15% off your first order. So thank you guys so much for listening. I guess we'll go into questions now.
Well, that was fantastic, Taylor. And you went into a great deal of detail about how you got from concept to market, which I think is fascinating. And my camera's not turning on. There we go. But you raised a couple of interesting points that I just thought it would be worth circling back to. For one thing, I think a lot of people don't think about the nut butter industry. I mean, for a long time, sort of peanut butter was that market and that was it. And then, certainly when I was first out of college, you started to see a lot of almond butters come onto the market and people started to think a little bit more about what was actually in peanut butter and what some of the healthier choices were. But, I'm intrigued. The growth of that industry now means that there's both a lot of competition, but seemingly a lot of opportunity. And I'm curious, you started off with a kind of direct to consumer opportunity at a green market. And now obviously you're moving into the retail industry. So what's that sweet spot that lets you make that switch? I mean, did you have to be on the scene for a certain amount of time or get to a certain sales level before you could start talking to brokers and others about entering into a retail that wasn't direct to consumer?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely sort of a threshold situation. I think the way we started out was we enlisted the help of a sales rep company that was sort of a rung below a broker that helped us open the doors into grocery or retail chains. And the thing that's great about New York specifically is we don't have a ton of huge retail chains. We have a lot of like corner store groceries. They call them like specialty grocers. So in the New York area specifically, there's hundreds of them, which is unique and great for smaller brands because you can just go into the store and potentially meet the general manager or the owner of the store who is the one making the decision. You can't go into a Whole Foods and meet the decision maker at that Whole Foods. That's just not the way it works. So I think that helped us a lot in the beginning in order to reach that threshold number, just being in the New York area and having access to those people in those smaller stores.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. Actually, I can see that where locally owned grocers have a lot more freedom for what they're willing to take a chance on their shelf. You also said something intriguing about the shelf life for products. And this again makes complete sense that something in a glass vessel is going to last a lot longer than other types of packaging. I would also imagine that if you're in the healthier sector of the nut butter industry, you also don't want to use plastic where there's a potential for plastic to leach into the product and create other issues for you. I'm curious, when you started to think about packaging, again, being in that organic sector, was there any interest before you got to glass at looking at other kinds of recyclable products or biodegradable products for packaging?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to do something in the biodegradable sphere, but it turns out that not only are those types of packaging really hard to find, but they are extremely expensive, and we just didn't have the capital behind us to make that expense. And the unfortunate part of that situation is a lot of times consumers don't understand that piece of it. So they're unwilling to pay, an extra $3, let's say, for a product if they perceive that product to be in a certain price range. So it's just sort of trying to cater to the customer in that way, that they know what glass is, they know that it's a little bit more expensive than plastic, so they're willing to pay that extra fee. I think if we took that extra step, they probably wouldn't be interested as much in the product.
I can see that as well, because again, you're willing to spend a certain amount of money on a nut butter, but there's psychologically a point at which you think that's a very expensive jar sitting on my shelf. Yeah. So, one other thing that I'm curious about, feedback is obviously very important, and you made the point that you can't please everybody and people have very different tastes. Was there a particular comment that you got at some point early in the process that was especially helpful, or something that you said, I'm just going to ignore that because that's very particular to that person?
Well, we definitely got a lot of very particular comments to those particular people. I had someone talk to me at a market about sea salt for like 20 minutes. But yeah, I think the important thing is to just pay attention to those tidbits that you hear often. So something that we heard more often in the beginning was people preferred a smoother consistency product rather than a chunkier consistency product. And that sort of came naturally when we expanded into the co-packer, just by virtue of having better machinery that was able to churn a smoother consistency nut butter. So we were able to achieve that ultimately. But yeah, that was one of the comments that we heard more often than not, that we wanted to achieve as soon as possible.
And I noticed, when I was very fortunate to have a Christmas gift from your parents with some samples of Broma in it last December. And when I went on your website and did a little sleuthing on the web at the time, I discovered there were a lot of people with recipe ideas for using Broma, and some of them were really inventive and clever and things I would have never thought of for using the product. And again, with people's growing interest in eating organic and kind of thinking about how they make things, have any of the recipes that have come to you across the transom been especially intriguing or helpful in thinking about next flavors or things like that?
Yeah, most recently, people have said that particularly the coconut, which I've already mentioned is my favorite, sort of melts if you put it on top of ice cream like a chocolate shell. So if you were to drizzle it on top of an ice cream, it creates like a, I don't know if you know that brand Magnum. They have a specific chocolate that has a hard chocolate top. So just drizzling that on an ice cream creates that like crunchy chocolate, which not necessarily a recipe, but I think that's a cool addition. So we're definitely going to explore maybe working with some ice cream companies to see if we can partner together on that.
Oh, that's great. I actually tried that. That worked very well. So I highly recommend that. And I too really like the coconut. I think that it's, you mentioned the Girl Scout cookie with the coconut, but I think just in general, chocolate and coconut is such a pleasing combination. And so it was really great. And it was really great on ice cream. My last question for you is, breaking into the CBD sector. I mean, obviously huge growth in the last couple of years, and probably infinite growth still possible in that sector. Does that force you into any different regulations or different ways you have to differentiate the products that have CBD and those that don't?
Yeah, so we actually had to get a different manufacturer in order to create the hemp product, just because laws are changing, but they're not really in effect yet. And a lot of people don't understand what they should be doing surrounding those new laws. So we have a production facility in Colorado that has a specific CBD license in order to create a CBD based product. And we have to do other little things like when we put it on our website, we have to make sure that it's only being sent to specific states. I think there's only 9 of them that we wouldn't be able to send it to. And then there's another like payment platform we have to use that's sort of an add-on to our current payment platforms in order to sell the CBD product. But it's gradually changing in our favor. And I think the reason why we wanted to do it now is to sort of be ahead of the game. Because in a year from now, 2 years from now, the market may be flooded with
Sure.
food-based CBD products. So we want to be ahead of that flood.
And my very last question is one that, I guess I'm kind of curious about. So there's a moment when you're a product that's a niche product and you're, sort of in a boutique range of stores, and you're seen in a certain light. And then there could be a threshold where you suddenly become a national brand. And sometimes that can be a negative. If you've grown to love a certain product, sometimes what you love about it is that sort of special boutique quality. And then suddenly something can seem like it's gotten too big. And is it really the product I still love? And I know you're still growing the company, but is there any worry about how you maintain brand integrity and have people still feel this is the Broma that you set out to make?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way, at least from my perspective, to remain keep that brand integrity would just be to be open about our ingredients and where we're sourcing them, like what countries specifically, especially for things like the cocoa, which there's a lot of issues with the supply chain with chocolate specifically. So just being open about who our suppliers are, where we're getting our ingredients from, and just maintaining that aspect of transparency. And we're here for you. The product is for you. And making sure that we always keep our customers' health in mind, I think would be the most important things to maintain as we continue to grow as a company.
That's great. Well, I'm going to see if our audience has any questions. People can either write into the chat or feel free to unmute themselves and ask the question, because we're a small enough group, we can do this directly. But while we're seeing if anybody has any questions, here's a question. Oh, no, that's you writing eatbroma.com. Perfect. So I highly encourage people to go to the website. Any final thoughts from you?
Hi, Lisa.
Yes, go ahead. Hi, Michael.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a question to Taylor. By the way, that was a great presentation, Taylor. Very impressed. And I just had a question. As we were going through the presentation, I happened to notice that one of the ingredients in the dark chocolate almond spread is sunflower oil. Mm-hmm. And I remember it wasn't too long ago, because I do eat a lot of nut butters, and seeing one that had palm oil and saying, geez, I wish they used sunflower oil instead of palm oil, because again, Italy and even Argentina, they use sunflower oil a lot, at least a lot more than we use in the US. So I was just wondering how you chose sunflower oil.
Sure. Yeah. So we chose sunflower oil in order to steer away from exactly what you're talking about, the palm oil issues, especially a couple of years ago. I'm sure you saw in the media that Nutella was being attacked because they were using a ton of palm oil, because that's the only thing that they use in their products. Palm oil is a great substance if you want to keep a product on shelf for a long period of time because it has a very long shelf life. But the way that you harvest palm oil essentially means decimating rainforests. So that's why they were getting the flack for that. And that's part of the reason why we didn't use palm oil from the outset, although of course it would help our product just being on the shelf, but it's something that customers are aware of, the issues surrounding palm oil. So we just didn't want to be a part of that. So we decided to go the more holistic organic route by using the sunflower instead.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we don't seem to have any other questions. I'm going to say once again, people should go to eatbroma.com and explore. And you know, it makes a great gift if people want to buy that for friends or family. And you know, Taylor, I hope you're going to come back and talk to us in the future as the company grows and evolves. I think you've given people a lot to think about, both from the business perspective as well as, you know, the product that we all enjoy. So thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Great, thank you.